It's 5 years with a renewal, so after 5 years, we can opt out, or we can ask for another 5 years, or we can ask for 1 2-year extension. So it's 5 years would be the max. I mean, 10 years would be the max, but it's set up in 5-year terms, or 1 2-year, so if there's a problem, we don't have to wait like 10 or 15 or whatever.
And the cities around here are pretty good at working together and being reasonable, but you don't know when that's gonna break down. And when you have a fuel surcharge paragraph that starts talking about and other costs, that's scary.
Did our last contract have that other costs in there?
I don't remember. I'm not sure if I even saw that last contract, I might have, but.
I think it was, was it 15 years ago?
Oh, that was before my time.
Yeah, because it was before my time on the council. 12 or 13 years ago, I think, was the last time we signed a disposal agreement with the city of Moscow. Do you happen to know, Wendy?
Well, issues, solid waste, sewage, all these issues are hot button issues politically. It's just think you, as politicians, you have to be careful. As elected city officials, you've got to be careful, and as an attorney addressing those types of issues, I have to be super careful. So a lot of that email was just CYA for you and for me, because I wanted to make sure that you're at least on notice what my concerns are. And if you decide to raise them, great. If not, then you proceed at your own risk. Yeah.
That's actually my question. Since you won't be here probably for it, are there ever consequences for when you ask to change wording usually, like, or does it usually just take it or leave it? Is the words you hear? Or?
The consequences are that the attorneys with these other political entities are generally pissed with me. I'm sorry to use vulgar language, but they hate it when I review their contracts because they don't like their language being picked apart, and they take it typically as a personal criticism. I don't know what to do about that.
Right.
Because I've got a client to be concerned about. I can tell you some nightmare stories where city I've represented was in a contractual agreement with another political entity, and they went ahead and did something in blatant violation of the agreement. And when we found out, and I raised it as a concern, their attorney was furious with me that I was making such a big deal about it. And it was potentially a big liability issue for my client. So attorneys are just touchy people. I don't know what to do about that.
Right.
But engineers, I mean, everybody that when I review their writings, and when people review my stuff, can't help but feel, I don't know what the word is, but it's my work product. And
attacked, maybe.
Yeah,
criticized.
Yeah, but you have to be able to put that aside and make sure, because coming up with a good, solid contract is in everybody's best interest, not just yours, but the City of Moscow's as well.
So in other words, it doesn't hurt us to ask for these changes.
No. So I try to be on good relations with them as much as possible, but it's not just me. I mean, all attorneys are mad at each other. So
it's a good insight.
Yeah. And we try to get along when we're outside of work situations, but the gloves go on when you have to deal with this stuff, and it's sometimes not pretty. So I don't expect a good reaction from the city attorney for Moscow. I think she's going to be frustrated, and I think and we know, I've dealt with Amanda Bashir, Bashaw, yeah. I've dealt with her every time the solid waste comes up, and she's been very frustrated with my comments. So, because they do a lot of good hard work to try to make it work right, and then an attorney comes along and looks at it and says, well, I think we need to change something here.
So I'm just wondering, like, if we sign with the county, I wonder if their contract is going to take care of some of these, like, would their contract supersede this contract?
I don't know all the interlocking parts at this point because I didn't review all those other contracts, I only reviewed the solid waste contract with City of Moscow because that was the rush job, and that's what I was able to get done before my theoretical final day. So, you know, I think that if you have somebody, Jennifer, whoever it is, that's familiar with all these various agreements, you have to really look at them and read them all together and figure out how they all fit together, and that's complicated. It takes a lot of study. So a lot or all of my concerns might be resolved through these other contracts, but I couldn't tell you. My guess is not, that they all won't be resolved.
Do you know if there's a way, Wendy, we can get a copy of the old contract so that the new attorney can look at both contracts?
I'll just have to see if I can find it yet.
You mean the one from 10 or 15 years ago?
Just as a comparison thing for, I mean, I'm more curious than anything. I mean, I trust your judgment, Ken. I just want to, you know, compare and see what they actually changed versus what they said they changed.
Oh, sure, yeah. And, you know, and I expect you folks to, you know, you're all very familiar with these issues. And I expect you to go through my comments and look at the agreement and say either yay or nay. Like, yeah, I think he raises a legitimate concern, or no, I just don't see that's a concern. It really is a lot of wording stuff. And some of it is basically, is the city aware that it's going to have this obligation, that it has to do such and such, supervised waste disposal and things like that. Now, that might be addressed in the other contracts. But, no. Anything else on that? Did you want to talk about the infraction ordinance later, or?
Well, I think we have to make a decision on that solid waste agreement.
Yeah, you want a table, right? Go ahead.
It's up to you guys.
It's on the table.
No,
Go for it.
You're not gonna hurt my, you're not gonna hurt my feelings if you decide tonight to sign it.
Yeah, no, I'll make a motion to table to review this later for the waste disposal agreement.
I second. All in favor? Passes.
Now we're on the ordinances, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the next item?
Mm-hmm.
Or ordinance, or,
The ordinance
I only prepared one ordinance.
for the penalties and violations.
I did it all in a single ordinance?
Yep.
Okay. Did you all have a chance to take a look at it? I know, again, well, I only just finished it this morning. So I started working on it last week and I couldn't get back to it until this morning. And I had it mostly done, but it took me a little bit to get wrapped up. Can I just run through the changes real quickly and just interrupt me if you have any questions? But just sort of as an overview, and this is the stuff I like doing, because this is the stuff that makes your jobs easier, brings down costs to the city, and it resolves potential problems. Just because if you look at a number of the provisions in the city code, I don't think you want to be charging somebody with a misdemeanor for having an old car in their driveway, and then they have a right to a jury trial if they get charged with a misdemeanor. I don't think you want to be going to jury trials on things like that. So, as you know, as I talked about last time I was here, I went through the code along with Wendy. I picked out the things that I thought should be changed from misdemeanors to infractions. An infraction is a civil penalty, so they don't have a right to a jury trial, they don't have a right to a public defender, and it's like a speeding ticket. And so I went through the ones that I thought should be changed to infractions. The others I left as misdemeanors, but one or two of them I had to tweak the language a little bit. So the way the city code was written, there was a general penalty in chapter 1 that made all violations of the code misdemeanors unless otherwise provided. So I've modified that now so that all violations of the code are infractions unless otherwise provided. And then each of the provisions that I thought should be infractions, and you can feel free to say, no, we think this should stay as a misdemeanor, and it'll take just a little tweaking to change it back to a misdemeanor. But the things that I thought should be infractions reference now the general penalty. So they no longer have a penalty section in them. The penalty section simply says the penalty shall be as provided in section 1.24.010, which is the general penalty provision. And that way you have this uniform way of providing for penalties throughout your city code. They're all infractions unless otherwise provided. So, so just going through these, well, let's start with that general provision. The way that I've written it, and when you look at this, anything, I've set out the code section in full, and then the Idaho code requires, whenever you amend an existing code section, you leave all the language in there, but you put a strike through, a line through, anything that you're going to be removing, and you underline any language you're adding. So that way you can see how it reads now and what I'm proposing changing, by what I'm proposing taking out or what I'm proposing adding. So the general penalty provision now reads, instead of saying that any person violating the code shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, it says shall be guilty of an infraction. And then what I've done is I've written it, and you may decide to change this, but I know we talked about this last time I was here. Paragraph B of that section says any person convicted of an infraction for a violation of the ordinance is punishable by a fine of up to $300. However, 2 or more violations of any ordinance of the city of Juliaetta within 1 year shall constitute a misdemeanor. And that way, if you get these repeat violators, then it can move up to a misdemeanor. Now, whether you want to make it 2 or more violations or 3 or more, however you want to do that. But that's similar to, for instance, like the DUI provision under state code, where if a person gets a DUI, one DUI, it's a misdemeanor, but if they get a second or a third within a certain period of time, then it steps up to a felony. So I figure you probably want to have that stepped up provision, but you probably want to think about whether I've got it worded the way you want. The first section, just going numerically, I'm moving on now to chapter 6. Addressing dogs. I don't think a person who has a loose dog should be charged with a misdemeanor. If you want it to stay as a misdemeanor, I can change it back, or whoever takes over can change this back. But you have to understand, because that's probably the most common thing I get called to the courthouse on, is, as Wendy knows, and Wendy says, oh my God, they could have a jury trial on this. You could literally be paying $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 in attorney's fees trying a loose dog case, and it could go on for 6 months or a year. So I just don't see that you want to keep that as a misdemeanor unless it's a repeat thing, and then it falls under that stepped-up provision. The next one I propose changing to an infraction is the public nuisance ordinance. And that would become an infraction as well. So that's basically your messy yard case. I don't think you want to be taking people to jury trials on that. Wrecked or dismantled vehicles, I already talked about that. That would become an infraction. Fire prevention and safety would become an infraction. Offenses against public decency. Now this is a statute. This is essentially a firearm violation. And I think that's a more serious violation. You probably want to keep that as a misdemeanor. It does not, at this point, it does not have a punishment section in it. So I'm proposing we add a penalty, a new penalty section to it. And just to make it absolutely clear. And so the way it had been written, there was a general penalty section which made everything a misdemeanor. So it would have fallen under that. But since the general penalty is now an infraction, now I've got to add a penalty section to that provision, making it a misdemeanor, keeping it a misdemeanor, essentially. And Next one, the traffic code is a little bit complicated. I know you had questions on it from the email that I sent to Wendy that she forwarded on to you, or the letter that I sent. The way that it's written right now is you incorporate Idaho motor vehicle laws into your code. So any violation of Idaho traffic code is a violation of city code. So you've incorporated all of that into your code, but then you have a section that states that any violation of this chapter shall be an infraction punishable by up to $50. And so it would be a very unusual situation, but if you are prosecuting somebody for a violation of traffic code, some serious reckless driving or something like that, which would be a misdemeanor, well, you want the punishments to be as they're set out in Idaho code, rather than providing an infraction penalty under your code. Because if a judge looks at it and there's a conflict between the two punishments, they're always going to go with the lighter punishment, which means you could have somebody committing a serious violation of Idaho traffic code successfully arguing that they can only pay a $50 fine. That's all you could come after for them. Does that clear up that confusion? So the way I've written it now is I've written any violation of Idaho motor vehicle laws pursuant to that code section that adopts them shall be punished as provided by said Idaho motor vehicle laws. So whatever Idaho code says for punishment is how they would be punished. However, any violation of any other provision, because you've got a number of provisions that set out violations of city traffic code, those would be punishable as infractions. Running stop signs, things like that. So you gotta have that dual punishment, that way you're preserving what you've already incorporated about Idaho code. And sewer service system violation, I changed that to an infraction. And uniform construction code infraction. Manufactured housing and mobile homes, I changed to an infraction. Subdivisions generally did not have a, no, it was a misdemeanor. And so I've changed all those to infractions. I would say take a look at them, and if you think some of them are more serious than that, you may want to think about removing them from this proposed ordinance. But I did the best I could trying to sort of guess what I think you're going to want changed. And always keep in mind that if it is a misdemeanor, it could be really big bucks. And whoever you get for city attorney after me, I'm guessing you're probably going to be paying a higher hourly rate. That's what I'm seeing. Yeah.
So, and I really like what you've done here, I agree with it. But just to clarify, in your legal assessment, none of this will loosen the teeth or lessen the bite of certain infractions that we're kind of plagued with, like the loose dogs, like in any way, shape, or form. This will still allow us to enforce such things and follow through on these things without any interference or lesser punishment.
Well, the punishment will be lesser for the ones that I'm changing to an infraction. It's a fine only. It becomes a misdemeanor when it's the potential jail sentence.
We've never followed up on a misdemeanor, or, court anyway, so.
That's because I've always settled all those cases with consultation with mayor and city council.
Gotcha.
And generally the resolution on loose dog cases is they agree to build a kennel, mayor goes out and inspects, looks good, case gets dismissed. But some of those cases could have potentially gone to jury trials. And that would have been a big hit to the city, financial wise.
So I guess to my fellow council members, what I don't want to do is make it easier or even encourage people to have more loose dogs, or even the excessive burning and things, the things that I think create the most nuisances here. And there's really only a couple.
And that's why I put that stepped up provision in the general violation section, that if they repeat offenders, then it could step up to a misdemeanor. But for a first offense, I've dealt with loose dogs. It's the nightmare. It's a scourge of every small city.
Gotcha.
The police hate it. The people on city council, the mayors, everybody hates dealing with these situations. We all have had, anyone who's ever had a dog has had that dog out loose, accidentally. And some of them really are. Ran out the front door and barked at somebody, and then all of a sudden you got a police officer knocking on your front door, and you're getting cited for a loose dog. Do you really want to prosecute those people as under the misdemeanor penalty?
No, but they don't wanna pay $50 either.
Sure, but I don't think people are going to be settling the cases any more likely because you take away the possibility on a first offense of a jail sentence.
Right,
Because I don't think anyone takes that seriously.
right,
Nobody thinks the city's gonna put them in jail.
right.
And I don't think a judge is gonna put them in jail. I think the judge is gonna fine them and call it good. But then if they're back again in 30 days on the same darn thing, then you have to start wondering whether you need to start threatening with a jail sentence.
Okay.
Messy yards, same thing. That's the second most common violation, and also a big headache for small towns. So I've done what I can, and I think, you may have some changes here and there. Wendy and I have gone through the code pretty carefully, and I think I found all of them. Now, there's certain ones that are not addressed in here that are misdemeanors that I'm thinking should stay misdemeanors. You may look at them and say, no, we don't, like a violation of the voting provisions that you have. That's all about fraud stuff, and that's pretty serious stuff. So I've just left it alone, I haven't touched it, and those are all punishable as misdemeanors. So you may look at it and say, let's make that an infraction too.
Well, I'd actually like to motion
Go ahead.
to accept the proposed ordinance 2023-01, which amends Juliaetta City Code penalties for violating.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Do we have to suspend the rules?
Oh, yeah, you have to suspend the rules of the readings. I move to suspend the rules of the readings of ordinance 20-23, or 2023-01.
That wasn't a misdemeanor, right?
I don't think anyone
I
wants to
second.
read this whole thing, it's a lot of pages.
All in favor?
Did we have a second?
I marked it.
Do you want me to read the title?
Yeah, read by title only. Sorry.
Ordinance number 2023-01, an ordinance of the City of Juliaetta, Latah County, State of Idaho, providing for the amendment of Title I, Title VI, Title VIII, Title IX, Title X, Title XIII, Title 15, and Title 16 of the City Code of Juliaetta, Idaho, to amend the punishment for violations of specific provisions contained in the City Code of Juliaetta, Idaho, providing that if any portion of this ordinance is invalidated, the remaining portions not so affected shall remain enforceable, providing that all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with the ordinance are repealed, and providing that this ordinance shall be effective upon adoption and publication as provided by law.
So now we gotta go back to the original motion?
Yes.
I motion that we accept proposed ordinance 2023-01, which amends Juliaetta City Code penalties for violation.
And I second.
All in favor?
And have a roll call vote, please.
Roll call.
Yes.
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 Okay, so Wendy, I'll send you my usual attorney certification and the
Summary?
publication summary.
Okay. Thank you.
I think I'm off the hot seat now, but
Yes, you did good. Thank
anything you
you.
want me to stay for?
I
I don't think so.
don't think so.
Okay, if there's anything else, then we can talk more at this executive session next week. And I'm sorry that I can't be here, but I'm out of the area, so. But if you could put me on speakerphone, I'll give you my 2 cents.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
As
And
always.
thanks, I mean, I'll be seeing you again and talking with you more before I'm finished. What I'll do is I'll send a email to the mayor confirming that I will continue to serve until you appoint a new city attorney. Is that fair? I knew that was a possibility, but I had to come up with some end date in the hopes that you'd come up with someone, knowing that there's a possibility you might have to move in out ways. So I'll make sure I get that. I know the mayor's email is working, so I'll send it to the mayor.
Thank you.
Does that work for you, Dick? Does that work for you?
Yeah,
I'll confirm that to you.
yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Good night, home.
Clarify the joint ownership of the former community library project.
So, I went into, because, when was that? Maybe March, April? We talked about, to clean up all of the various signers on the community library project account, that we would close it and then reopen it with the appropriate signers. Well, we need to say, or you rather, need to say who you want the joint owners of that account to be. It'll be a city account, no money will do anything different, it'll just have the city's name on it and not the community library project's name on it. You just need to say who you want those joint owners to be. I assumed it would be the mayor and Bonnie and I, but it can be who you want.
Yeah, I think it should be you guys too. You guys?
They want that in the minutes in order to be able to
Right.
do that.
You guys good with that? Okay, I make a motion that the mayor and treasurer and whatever you guys are. Put it in there, however you want, yeah. But Bonnie and Wendy and Dick have signing rights.
All in favor?
And a second.
I second.
All in favor? Passes.
Oh, that was the fastest one we've had.
All right, do we want to, put dust coat down on some of the,
So, we've had dust cleaning done the last 2 years in a row. Matt Anderson asked me specifically again this year if we were gonna do it. They wanna do Old Main again, and they will pay for that section. I called to get the pricing, and the price did go up. So, it's 14 cents a linear foot. If we did the same amount we did last year, the total would be $5,040.
How effective do you feel it was last year?
The first year I wasn't sure. Some of it washed off. Last year it did a little better. Mary Lou, your guys' road, do you think it helps Adams at all? And Lynn, does it help control dust?
What do you think?
No? Nat Anderson seems to think that it does help his driveway and his road. So if they wanted to do it, they still could call Lyman and have them do it. But I guess it would be up to you guys if you want to spend money or not.
So this 5,040, that does not include the section that they're gonna pay for? That's just what our bill would be, or does that include their
Well,
section and
I
they're gonna
don't
pay
know,
for some
Bonnie,
of that?
did we bill Matt Anderson and them separately? Because I think Matt Anderson had to call Lyman and set up an account with them before they would do it. So I think that's just our sections. We could eliminate some sections, but I don't want to be involved in that. Railroad is long, and Meadow Drive is long. Those are the two longest sections.
And Meadow only has 2 residents out there, right? So it's not really benefiting a whole bunch of people.
How many lives on Railroad?
Well, it gets a lot of traffic too.
Charles
so,
Burke.
like,
That's not by you, right?
Yeah. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
that does get a lot of traffic.
So what, how do you feel that it worked out there?
Yeah, you mostly did over by the other side though, right? Did you actually go?
We did all of Railroad,
Okay.
so,
Yeah, I think it helps, but, it gets really bad down there, and I don't recall last year being really bad, so.
like dusty wise.
Yeah, I think it helps, but,
If it does help, it helps the whole town, in my opinion, and
Yeah.
that there'll be less dust on Lynn, less dust
Yeah.
on, so it's, it's kind of, Bonnie, what's our street situation? Do we have money in streets to do it? And will it affect our paving next year at all that much? Probably not a whole lot. So, it's up to you guys.
and not for my own interest, but if we do it, I think we should keep Railroad Street. It does get excessive amount of traffic on
Yeah, the railroad street's what started the whole thing.
it. Yeah. And rightfully so.
So,
Well, is there another area that might be, like, if Railroad Street gets a lot, I'm good with keeping that. They used it, when I worked for the landfill, they used it a lot in the summertime when we were able to, 'cause we usually watered the roads, but that doesn't always work.
yeah.
You don't always have the time, so they did start doing dust abatement. And it did seem to help for a little bit, for a few months, which, that's all we're hoping for at this point is
Yeah.
to get through the summer, so I don't have a problem with, like, roads that we use a lot of, so I'm just wondering if there's roads, like if Mary Lou didn't see a lot, or
I've
maybe
never
Mindy.
noticed a problem with dust before, after. I wonder, what do you think?
Actually, I've only really noticed dust recently, but there's a lot of tire spinning that goes on up that street. So I don't think anything on that street lasts.
It's a horrible drive hill. It's a horrible drive hill. Well, what is Jim gonna say? Gee, there's a lot of dust. What is Jim gonna
Well,
say?
see, Jim gets both sides.
Yeah.
Jim gets the Lynn side.
Oh,
and
true.
then he gets
Yeah,
the Ag side.
Right,
So I don't know. I
If
never
anybody was
paid
gonna say
attention
something,
to
he
dust.
would probably have to say.
Well, what they told us is that as you keep doing it, it's supposed to build up a crust or something. But
Right.
because
Yeah,
we
it
plow,
does. It does.
snow,
I don't know how well that crust handles through the plowing of snow. I get the logic behind it.
Because, you take up on the hills where they do it every year, you notice them spots does not get washboardy like the
Yeah,
other
that could
spots do.
I say we go for it and just continue on.
Quick question. Do they have to do it a certain time? So like say, particularly to Railroad Street, harvest doesn't start till August. So it's really a 2 to 2.5 month endeavor where you have that much traffic. Is there a certain time of year where, and the dust doesn't really get bad till it gets that dry generally too.
they want it to get rained on, is what they tell us.
But they
So
want
they
it to
should've done
get
it the
rained
last
on
couple
before
days.
they put it down,
Because the
right?
magnesium chloride absorbs moisture, and that's what
Yeah.
causes the dust
Gotcha.
to abate. It's not a petroleum product, so it soaks into the ground like oil. It's a chemical that attracts moisture,
Gotcha.
is what it
I
does.
get what you're saying, because, it is gonna be more worn down by the time we hit those months, but I know there's a reason when they
Yeah,
put it on.
it's supposed to last a year, but obviously between the plowing and,
So, even if we could get through harvest,
yeah. I don't know how soon they can come down either. They may be out a week or a month or,
Okay, that's my next question, is when would you think they would do it?
I would say they're probably 2 weeks out, would be at least 2, maybe,
Yeah, at least a couple of weeks.
because
So
we're
is
kind
there a
of.
minimum we
we're
have to
late.
meet?
I don't think so. No.
Personally, I just feel like we should just continue on with what we've done.
I move to keep doing what we've been doing with the dust abatement treatment.
I'll second.
All in
And
favor?
I will say,
Pass.
just pay attention this year if it really is helping. It seems to help initially, at least for a while, and if it is helping, then we can think about it next year.
Well, if it helps with the washboards, that's a lot right there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed a lot, it really, at my Heim Gardeners, where they put the dust coating down on the round it stays smoother in there, it doesn't washboard like the rest of the road does.
Okay.
And, the
Cross
police
doesn't have as
officer-
many, Cross doesn't have washboarding like it used to. Remember Jan was always calling,
Yeah.
wanting us to go grade the road, but it doesn't seem to be
Yeah,
like that anymore either.
it kind of packs the ground.
Okay. Staff reports, the only other thing I had was Charles Burke is complaining, because of the 2 storms that we've had, he's getting a lot of mud. It's not just the water, he's actually getting mud washed down onto his property. And so, he asked Ryan and I if he could put in a drain system, a storm drain system, which he did. We gave him the box, the concrete box, and some pipe, and he dug it all in and has it all ready to go. I mean, it was working, but then now he's getting mud. So we looked at it on Monday, yesterday, and over here at Steiger's, the ditch is really deep now. It's just eroding the dirt down and down and down and down. And so all the mud is coming from there. So what I proposed to him was that we could put a drain tile like we have, a large culvert into that ditch, which would alleviate any more erosion of mud. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be buried, but just something in there to keep the water flowing, because there's so much water. It collects all of Maine, it collects Second, all of that goes in that culvert by the post office. So I don't know how much it will cost. Dick might have a better idea when they did that drain tile, but something might have to be done.
You need to cover it.
Well, we can cover it if we need
Or
to.
the sun
Oh, the sun will ruin the,
will
okay.
eat it up.
okay. So that's what's going on.
Was this caused before or after he was, you're talking about off his bank there, right?
It goes down to the bottom, and there's that big sweeping corner, and the water now just goes, and it goes off that corner and then right down into his property.
So this had nothing to do with his digging on the hill, or was that his solution?
No, he was digging to help try to abate the water.
Did that contribute to the problem, or did it?
No, it
Okay.
didn't. I asked Frank about this, because I was concerned, and Frank's answer was, water goes where water wants to go, and it's other people's problems. But I do know that it is a lot of water, which is now turning to mud, and since he did put in his own drain at the bottom to divert it away, I think this would be something that is an easy fix that we can do, and, you know, and it may be a liability of the city to have that ditch there. If you go look at it, I can stand in the bottom of it almost, and you may not be able to see my head.
So
It
where,
is
where's
right over
this
here
at?
next to Steiger's property,
Like on the lower side of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
right
put-
across from Neil's.
Yeah, I put that culvert in that,
The lower one.
Where's that?
yeah, that lower culvert.
Yeah, it works good.
Yeah,
It's the upper part now that's open, an open
Below Main
ditch.
Street, still on Second Street.
yeah, it needs to
Oh,
be,
So that's just an issue that's
but you
going
gotta
on.
be careful there now. Them telephone lines,
I remember
they
it,
run across that ditch.
yeah. Well, I don't think we'll even have to dig.
Yeah, I don't.
I
Literally.
can't imagine.
I think it's deep enough that we may have to bring it up a little to put the pipe in, so,
Yeah.
but,
And,
So his dirt work didn't make it worse, and that?
no, his dirt work, he's been digging trenches, trying to get it to go different directions, and he hasn't really done anything up there dirt work wise. You can, I mean, you guys go down, and tell me what you think, but
I know that Anchor road's like crazy.
yeah, I tried getting some of the gravel swept up this morning, and I got some, but it needs to be hit again. It was starting to get really dusty, so I stopped, but it's gonna be more rain. We have the sweeper in Juliaetta now, and it's ready to go, so.
yeah, cause it's
But I think
a
we've
couple
covered.
hundred feet there. to pull in.
Oh, it's only from the corner to Steiger's driveway, that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, just that one little section. It's not all the way down, just
Yeah.
that one little section.
Are you gonna do anything with that culvert right here on the corner?
I'm going to unplug it, and I need to check and see if it's plugged underneath the debris.
Okay. I noticed it was pretty bad yesterday.
Yeah, and Wendy mentioned talking to the state about fixing the ditch that's in the pavement there, the groove, because it's
Right in front
gotten,
of the post office?
gotten really deep.
It's bad.
And
Yeah, that keeps getting washed out. deeper
Yeah, it's
and deeper
terrible.
all the
This-
time.
the highway department, that's their deal. I had
Yeah,
40 feet off the center line, I do not touch, because they have
Well, we can take
opinions.
some pictures, it's pretty deep in
So
some
we have
spots.
to wait for them to address
Well,
it? Cause it's really bad.
it's bad.
It is bad.
And how many people a day go that
Oh, a
route?
lot,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we'll see how far we get with them. If they decide they're not gonna do anything, we can throw some cold patch in it. It's no biggie. It's just, you know,
Right.
it's not engineered and
I
it's
know where you're
not.
coming from, 100%, I get it.
Yeah. Well, I just worry about a safety thing, and it's pretty
Yeah.
deep, and it's long, so, yeah.
Yeah, those are the only two things I had on the list.
The only thing I had was that, and you already answered it, so I don't have anything.
you have anything?
No.
Wendy?
So far,
Let birds
out
of the year. Okay,
I move to adjourn.
I second.
Favor?